I thought I would give some thoughts about the sign of Cancer. I think this is probably to do with the fact that Saturn is in Capricorn at the moment and emphasizing the Capricornian elements of life, which I detailed in a different video. But the Cancerian opposite is just as important because Saturn is opposed to that sign at the moment and somehow putting it into opposition. And so all Cancerians and Capricorns, particularly on those emphasized at the moment, especially with Pluto in Capricorn, the opposite sign is being activated as well. And I thought I'd like to talk about what it means as a kind of counterposition in relation to the Capricornian paternalism or conservatism. The Capricornian elements at large in the world with this Pluto and Capricorn have to do with the exposure of tyrannical sets, tyrannical structures within society. And we've seen this over the coming years with Pluto in Capricorn. And I'm going to talk about Capricorn a little bit because then we can contrast it with Cancer. We've seen that since 2008, in which I gave a lecture actually in Purley just before the financial collapse, and it was called "Is This the End of Capitalism?" It was a bit of a tongue-in-cheek term, but the title. But the point was made that something Pluto brings, where Pluto transits out, it brings out the where something is going wrong, where archetypal structures and dominance hierarchies and all of that, where the fault lines in them are. It's not that they shouldn't exist, but they need to function in a balanced way. And by that, I mean in a way that allows them room for maneuver, so should they get too set. This is what the kind of sign of Capricorn does. It gets control, it gets power, it gets a sense of achievement. It's being on top, you know, the CEO or the president, and then it gets set in its ways. And Set actually is that old Egyptian deity predating Saturn, an older form of Saturn, which goes back to ancient times as that which wanted to be put on the throne. Now, with Pluto in Capricorn is still there, what's happening is all of these fault lines and difficulties within dynamic structures of operation, governments, people with strong status, the inequities of society, and all of that, that's coming out. No institution, and I think Capricorn has a lot to do with dominance, hierarchies and institutions. It's the muck is coming out, the corruption is coming out in virtually everyone. Every bank, every high street, well-known high street bank has been fined for this, that or the other strange spending ideas or money laundering and so on. I can't detail them all, just go online and have a look. The church itself has been plagued with this problem of sexual abuse, as if the problem of sex and sexuality that's been hidden for so many years and had so much problem with has finally come out to the surface, and it can't speak anymore really of a moral tone on life when itself has somehow repressed and denied the instinctual reality of life and somehow tried to condemn it in the past. We're going back 150 years and it's taken a while, I think, for things to be more liberated and free. But this shouldn't end in the total destruction of such structures. It means they're going through an evolution. So Capricorn there, with Saturn in Capricorn, there is a great highlighting of these national bodies, these states of government, and the internet, I think, has been instrumental in somehow exposing some of this. not always absolutely bang on the facts, and people have their various neuroses which come into their presentations and so on, including my own. But nonetheless, things in hierarchical structures and places of power and institutions, all represented by the sign of Capricorn, are coming to be known. So Capricorn is a kind of paternalism, seeks to guide and to promote what life is like in the outside world. So one is prepared for it, so one is disciplined and controlled in one's approach, taking on a personal responsibility. Jordan Peterson has got a lot to say about personal responsibility and the way the world is, the world is a place of suffering and so on. A lot to do with that taking on of the world in a way that doesn't victimize the self. Cancer is the opposite sign to Capricorn, and should the difficulties of Capricorn get too much, should this oppressive, self-disciplined, over hard-working element of the a kind of any tyrannical structure we get in is bound to place pressure on the individual, then the sign of Cancer comes forth in a way to ameliorate that, or to oppose it means to really to balance it. I don't think the opposition in astrological signs has to do with adversaries so much as a counterposition should the other one become too over dominant. So what's required, I think, what is being pushed into the shadow with Saturn in the opposite sign, is this sense of being okay with oneself, being okay with what one has. I mean, the sign of Cancer has a lot to do with the embracing or the making of an arena in which one can feel safe and secure, is the provision of an emotional atmosphere in which one is loved for one's own sake. Not for any achievement of Capricorn, not for any particular outstanding qualities or position or status, but just simply for one's own sake. And that while we may fail in the outer world from time to time, or money gets short, or there's a problem with our individual self-expression, the Cancerian quality has to do with just being, as I say, okay. To move along with the varieties of emotional expression and knowing that they are valid reactions to life. So it's the kind of incorporation, I suppose, of a loving mother, of an attitude towards the self, in which one can contain the emotional dynamics that one has. Cancer has a lot to do with the mother in the sense of providing a warm embrace in which to feel safe and secure. I think the spiritual side of Cancer has a lot to do with the creation of context in which people can, in their vulnerability, in their sensitivities, can begin to express themselves as an individual without a judgment as such, but a kind of containing, a warm container in which emotional feelings are allowed to vent and allowed to just be there. So I suppose that what comes to mind is swimming in the sea sometimes, when one can just forget one's worries. But in the sea there are problems too. Of course, Cancer has its difficult side too. But what I wanted to do here was contrast it with the outer difficulties of Capricorn, because the sign of Cancer is likely to feel oppressed, the sensitivities within oneself, the sense of safety. What it can't stand is being on its own, but it's then that the Cancerian energy needs to be brought forth in oneself to learn to take care, I suppose, of our own emotional isolation. What do we do when there's a deprivation? What do we do when there isn't anybody to talk to? Well, there is the archetype in oneself that you can draw upon, the imaginative experience, and also, as I was on a more basic level, learning to cook good food for oneself and to prepare it, to make sure that the individual is taken care of. Surprising how many Cancerians, sometimes Librans, can take care of everybody else but not themselves when it comes to emotional security. Anyway, there's a contrast between these two signs which I may take up in further videos. Bye.